Hi and welcome to episode 157. Now we're doing things slightly different this time. We're here at eCom 1 HQ, recording our first eCom at 1 podcast live in the studio. And today's guest is David Meakin, Head of Partnerships and Solutions Engineering at SHOPLINE. Now, quite a rare breed, David. You know, you've got both sides, partnerships and the technical side, the engineering and solutions side. And we talk about both sides in this very interesting episode. We talk about things from live streaming, some very interesting stats around selling from lives. You know, how many of you are actually selling from lives? We go deep on that topic and many, many more. Without further ado, I'll give you David Meakin from SHOPLINE. Hi and welcome to our first episode live here in the studio at eCom 1. Welcome to eCom at 1. Today's guest is David Meakin, Head of Partnerships and Solution Engineering at SHOPLINE. How are you doing, David?
Very good, Richard. How are you?
I am very well. Thank you so much for coming in and making the journey over to see us.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the invite. Very happy to be here.
No problem at all. Now, I think it'd be great to kick off with you introducing yourself and introduce how you got into the world of e-commerce.
Sure. I've had the privilege of working both for lots of different vendors, e-commerce platforms, like Salesforce Commerce Cloud, a few other different technologies, and also working merchant side for the last sort of 8 years. And I just joined SHOPLINE to launch the European expansion on the 1st of April this year. So it's very exciting and a very crowded market, but very exciting for us.
Wow. So obviously you spent a lot of time sort of in the trenches working with merchants over the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years, seeing a lot of different things with a lot of different platforms. Why did you decide to join SHOPLINE?
Well, I was at Attraqt for the back end of last year, which is a search merch personalization platform. Yeah. And I got the chance to work with loads of different e-commerce platforms like BigCommerce and Shopify, Salesforce, and some of the bigger merchants, like the really big fashion ones. They've got very heavy technical custom platforms. Yeah. So I got to see lots of different approaches to how people are actually trading the websites, how they're running it, how they're growing their businesses online. And then SHOPLINE reached out sort of back end of last year, say December time, and I'd never heard of the platform, to be honest. It's a super saturated market, you know. But after a little bit of investigation, I spoke to a lot of very senior people from the product side and asked a lot of very technical questions about how it actually works under the hood. And eventually joined. It's a very interesting thing. Just need to grow a lot of market presence in Europe. Yeah.
So I think based on your sort of background, it's quite an interesting sort of merge of two roles potentially. Obviously, a lot of people in partnerships are very much focused on, you know, meeting and greeting the potential merchants and partner sort of ecosphere, but maybe with not as a deeper knowledge as yourself on the sort of technical and solutions side. I think that's quite a key
I started
switch.
Doing project management for Pepe Jeans Group and Hackett and replatforming mainly people from Hybris onto things like Magento or onto Salesforce Commerce Cloud. Yeah. And they're big, heavy projects that cost a lot of money and very, very complicated omni-channel international projects, which were really, really fun. But I got to see like all the complexities for how merchants actually are trading and what happens on that replatform project. And over time did more technical things or more sort of governance related things and ended up being a solution engineer for BigCommerce, which was an amazing sort of different experience. But what I want to bring to SHOPLINE and what we're trying to do to sort of in the partnerships area is really change the way that works. Lots of partnership people are very entertaining and really, really good at building relationships. But for agencies who are building on new technologies, who need help and need to be able to understand, you know, when this API goes wrong or how this particular thing works on new tech, they need someone who can actually add value, understand the problem, and know when to escalate, when to bring in the appropriate resources. So at SHOPLINE, we're putting a lot of effort into merging those commercial people with the technical people that can actually add value.
Yeah, I think that's great. I know quite a lot of the conversations we've had recently are with what we would have referred to as fairly substantial merchants doing sort of 10, 20 million plus, but they're maybe built on a bit of a clunky, shall we say, you know, something that's been inherited over many, many different teams, and then trying to get some of the other sort of tech, marketing tech working with those platforms, that sort of, if you like, cobbled together almost, if I can say it, sort of tech stack that's there can be quite challenging. And obviously if you've got somebody that's looking at replatforming, that want to replatform from something that's not a known platform potentially, and it's more, custom, that can be quite challenging, we found.
I think so. I think the platform you choose, actually the tech stack you choose, needs to be modern, needs to be microservices based. Like all these things are principles for how you build modern tech stacks. But actually project managing and getting the right governance, the right level of pragmatism on these projects so that they can happen smoothly is really important. So we're very involved. The same commercial people that are involved in the sales cycle are involved right until everyone's live, everyone's happy. And then we talk about, okay, how can we grow? How can we get this merchant to do better online? So that's the goal for everyone. And I think it's important that all parties work together in that process and not just worry about net new business.
Yeah, no, that sounds brilliant. So what would you say for the guys that are listening in, what makes Shopline different to the other sort of propositions out there?
I think a lot of the people listening won't have heard of Shopline. So quick background on that. We've got 500,000 customers. We're based in Singapore. So we're actually Asia's largest e-commerce platform, working with some amazing fashion and beauty and brands that are sexy products or complicated products like furniture where you've got interdependent variables, like really cool products. And we're doing this huge international expansion now to take on some of the more known players. And what Shopline have really pioneered is a fresh look at a more holistic approach to e-commerce. Like we've gone through like a few waves of big, mentioned some of them earlier, monolith systems where you need a lot of very heavy dev effort to be able to build experiences online, but they were powerful pieces of tech. Then you've got sort of the microservices based systems where basically you get death by apps. You have loads of apps that all ruin your SEO or your performance, and they don't talk to each other fully properly. What Shopline have built is a platform where you've got the same flexibility to do lots of cool stuff with any apps you like. It's fully open API, all that stuff. But the core product actually works, like it's got really good internationalization and really good features that every merchant needs to trade online.
I think, looking at the sort of feature list and some of the, the standout features for me, it's a couple of key areas which we'll step into. But obviously as behind the podcast, the eCom One, agency with a focus on SEO and PPC. So from the SEO perspective, I know you've got sort of very specific things. I think you could refer to it as easy rank SEO. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's just one of what we're calling the core components. Where every merchant who trades online needs to be able to monitor and improve and optimize their SEO really, really well. So we've got quite a large development team just working on this component, where they're constantly developing new features with AI and with lots of tracking tools to make sure that every page, every product, every single part of the site is fully optimized for SEO. And when you're developing the theme, when you're customizing that theme out, we're constantly monitoring, constantly checking, a little bit like Google Page Speed Insights, to make sure that everything's really performant. And if it's not, we'll be giving advice on how to change this. And again, a massive differentiator is our engineering team based in Singapore and based in all over Asia are actively monitoring that and every transaction that goes through the platform, so that if something does go really badly wrong, someone develops something or completely breaks your theme or slows something down heavily, they'll be messaging you, they'll be on your case and saying, oops, this is how to change that.
And I noticed that you obviously referred to AI there, and I can see on the features list referring to AI and content. Obviously most of our listeners, Shopify store owners, marketeers, we've all got that interesting day-to-day challenge of maybe having, let's say 10,000 SKUs on there, 10,000 products, 50,000 products, and obviously being able to manage the product descriptions, the data, the tech specs, the introductory paragraphs, the descriptions, all the words that go with each of those products are obviously in the millions of words, and that's something that we spend as an agency a lot of time. But as an agency, we also use a lot of AI now. But how instrumental has AI been to the platform in the last maybe 6 months or so?
I think everyone's on the AI bandwagon. But I think it should be used in a way to assist the trading and not just as a gimmick, know? So we've developed features where AI is in our ads system for what we're calling smart ads. So it will help suggest content for how you can create social posts and ads properly. Same with email marketing, same with our chat functionality. So if someone comes to the platform and or you see a post maybe where they're showing skinny jeans on Facebook for Black Friday or something like that, then our AI system will be able to tag the customer with the fact they've interacted with this skinny jeans product. And so that means it's much easier to create full omni-channel nurture streams for let's show this person skinny jeans and not baggy jeans to try to get the right product in front of the right customer at the right time.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. So obviously you've worked with a lot of merchants, you know, and obviously it's a newer platform for a lot of people that will be listening to the podcast. But what are some of the sort of common themes that you're seeing around sort of maybe challenges right now? You know, what some of the things that merchants are struggling with at the moment, you would say?
It is very varied. It does depend on the size of the merchant. A lot of merchants have, I'd say, overcomplicated what that tech stack is actually meant to be doing. Instead of thinking, what are the objectives? How do we find the customer? And everyone wants to do what I just said, which is try to get the right product in front of the right customer at the right time and increase their basket sizes and their conversion rates. That's kind of the goal. A lot of merchants have been sold very heavy pieces of tech to be able to do that. So I think sometimes just stepping back and thinking, what are the objectives of what we're trying to achieve here? Sometimes that means streamlining. Sometimes it means actually digging down on a certain piece of tech, which is actually going to help you. And I think that's kind of the really big confusion.
It was like a tech audit potentially.
Sometimes
quite often is required.
I think so. Based on the objectives of the business. I heard a statistic the other day, which is if you recorded all of the data ever from the beginning of human time to 2003 and put it all into a USB drive or whatever, we're now collecting that amount of data every 2 days. Okay. That's every session, every chat, every like, every interaction, every impression on social media is generated every 2 days, all of this data. And we're very behind in our industry to actually collect and target and use that data for growth. I don't know what you think about this, but my view is, like, as an industry, we think we're very innovative and we are in so many areas. But if you compare e-commerce to pharma, where they're now building drugs that can target radiotherapy so granular to the point of cancer, for example, that the side effects of those type of treatments are very minimal. You maybe don't lose your hair. If we could have, in a much less way, nurture streams that target the customer, identify using big data, this level of granularity, merchants will do much better online. And I think that's where we're going.
The sort of level of detail that we're not using, particularly, typically. When you compare it to pharma, for example, I've got a few friends in pharma and some of the conversations I had with them, it's sort of another level of complexity. Whereas we maybe flippantly will say, you need to remarket that customer, or we need to, you need to have a flow for that. But hang on a minute, using maybe 300 or 5,000 data points, or that the tech is using.
I think that's because the people who are trading the sites are looking 1 minute in TikTok for what's the analytics, who are their influencers, who are their segments there. Then they're going the same thing, do the same thing in Meta's business suite, doing the same thing in Google. And there's not many merchants have yet become mature enough to analyze all this data in one place and actually have a single view of the customer. Even if they have a CRM, they're not actually doing that stuff.
So the ones that do that are going to get the advantage then, in theory.
I think so.
I would say so. I think, we're going to have a lot of people also that have got stores, that sort of physical element. So having that, the omni-channel experience, but using a real deep level of data, I think are the guys that are going to win. We've got clients that have got 200-300 stores and obviously huge eCom presence. It can get more and more challenging. What would you say about the sort of that holistic omni-channel approach?
SHOPLINE has its own POS. We're one of the largest POS suppliers in Asia as well. And I think actually it comes back to what I was saying earlier about e-commerce and how it's changed over time. If you go into Selfridges or if you go into Hackett, where I used to work doing their product stuff, they're really good at, actually, maybe it's a test. Go to Bond Street, go into Hackett and go and buy a suit. They'll walk you through all the different suits, how it's fitting, the linings, the fabrics. They'll give you a gin. There's a gin bar upstairs. It's worth it, right? All that experience is so good. And what merchants need to be able to do is put that online.
Yeah.
And even if they don't buy the suit, and they're probably going to buy the suit after that, right?
Yeah.
But once that suit has been bought or not bought, what you need to be able to do is target that customer later
With those details.
With the details.
Yeah.
Maybe they love tweed now, or maybe they love a certain very bright red, right?
Yeah.
That's a different customer.
Yeah.
Someone who comes in and just buys socks for their dad for Christmas, right?
I've seen that a few times. I'm not going to probably mention brands right now, but I'm a big chap. We've met a couple of times face to face, but I'm a fairly big chap, to be fair, 6'7". So obviously off the peg, most sizes don't fit. In reality, it's like a triple XL, double XL. In terms of sort of length of arms and height and whatnot. And certain brands just don't accommodate that, but certain brands do. And one particular brand, when I go to their site, and it does what you said, I start looking at, double XL, rugger tops and shirts. And then all I see then are the products that are in stock that are double XL.
Yeah.
Well, there's no point selling me and showing me, trying to sell me and show me, small, medium, even large, because it's never going to fit, So...
Yeah.
That's quite simple, really. But the amount of companies that don't even do that.
Where do they get that data from? I mean, again, without mentioning brand names, but is that because you've bought a suit in the past on that website?
Yeah, it's because I've been on that site before.
Yeah.
I have bought from them for sure. And I'm, whenever I'm on that site, I'm only purely looking at that particular size.
Sure.
So I have bought from them many a time. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So we take that slightly further. Shopline have got the same functionality, but like I said, if someone goes to Facebook Messenger and sends a picture of a suit, or they interact and use certain keywords the e-commerce team have set up, that data is also used to funnel that level of personalization. So it can be really cool.
Yeah.
And we're about to launch in the Style, which is really cool Manchester-based fashion company. And their goal is to get to a point where they can do multiple personalized sales in a single day, but personalized based on what the customer's going to buy. And that's really cool.
Yeah. That leads me on perfectly to social commerce. I mean, there's a lot of things here that are popping up on my head, but I think when you say social commerce, what do you mean as a Shopline?
It's one of those things that is a buzzword, like headless and like all of those different things. It's social commerce is not just about social media. It's just generally how you're interacting with brands in a new way. The example about the suit is like really relevant, I think, in this. Yeah. Just about having a much better understanding of the customer. And we're based in Singapore. The way they shop in Asia is very different to the way we're shopping in Europe. It is all about their equivalent of WhatsApp and instant messaging and some guided selling they're really good at. All that type of stuff needs to be very, very holistic. So lots of every e-commerce platform should now at least be listing to Meta and to TikTok and all that stuff. But there's absolutely no point listing if you're just listing and then you're not bringing all this data back. So our social commerce is showing, listing ads and products to all the social medias, but bringing it back into the core product so that you can actually use this data to target your customers better. I think, again, that's where a lot of merchants are missing out at the moment.
Sorry. I mean, that's exactly what I think. I think, I was reading some stats earlier around sort of live streams, selling from live streams and selling from lives. I think 51% of that in the world is in China. Yeah. And when I think about our client base and the partner network we have and who does what, it's very limited, in the UK market. Yeah. Of people really doing much with the live stream. What's the sort of experiences and sort of case studies maybe you can reference of live streaming and Shopline?
There's loads of cool startups doing different types of live streaming. We've got native live streaming, which lists allows you to create a live stream at the back end of Shopline and list it to Facebook and Instagram and use the same keywords to have that single view of the customer. So in Asia, lots of people are coming to London, going to Bond Street, going into a Burberry, buying something, putting it on a live stream. Before they've even left the UK, they've sold the Burberry handbag. That's a big thing in Asia. They've seen it's come from London, right? Yeah. So for British businesses wanting to sell in Asia.
So hang on. So that's somebody's come here from Asia. They've bought it as an individual. Yeah. And then they've just sold it again via just their own personal.
Yeah. This is a big
TikTok
thing. It's a huge trend. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
It's a huge trend. Yeah.
It's paid for the trip.
That's what they do. Yeah. Because there's such a big demand for British businesses in Asia. That's kind of one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's loads of startups that do one-to-one shopping. You're selling a sofa, but you can't get to DFS. They're showing you sitting on the sofa, pushing it down. What happens if you spill a drink on it? That's a different type. And then there's live streaming for companies like Streamify who do the on-site selling.
Yeah.
Wherever this happens, wherever the live streaming stuff is happening, you still need to get that data back.
Yeah.
So if I comment on a live stream for a show or something,
it doesn't.
I might not buy it.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to lose that data.
Yeah.
Imagine how many times you've watched a video when you're bored, you're on TikTok in bed or something, and you just don't. That brand's losing out.
Just lost. Yeah. So I guess there'll be a lot of people listening now that are live streaming. They're no doubt see on the various channels they're on. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, etc. This will be streamed, but not necessarily live streamed. But I think you're right. Okay, we want to really get going with the live streaming side of e-commerce. What would you say to our listeners that really want to sort of dive into that? I know that's a side of our business as an agency that we're exploring. We've recently hired somebody starting in a couple of weeks. When this episode goes live, I think they'll be here in the business to work and develop our sort of live stream offer to our merchants. For the ones that are listening in that want to sort of get started or on that start point.
Yeah.
Really want to sort of do well at live streaming and selling via live stream. So what advice would you give to them?
I think don't just jump straight in. You need to know what you're doing. You can just do a test, I guess, but really you want someone to advise how will the live stream be different on Facebook compared to TikTok? Who is my customer base on that platform?
Yeah.
And is it going to be a silly, jokey thing, or is it going to be genuine, like TV shopping? So you do need someone to advise properly on that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'd say you also need a tech stack to be able to achieve it.
Yes, yeah.
But I'd say first of all, let's get someone who knows your brand, understands what you're trying to do, and make sure you do it properly, because you can easily ruin your brand by just going and being silly on TikTok.
Yeah. So take your time.
I think so, yeah.
I just wanted to introduce you very quickly to our sponsors, Pricing. Now, Pricing is a competitive price tracking and monitoring software that can dynamically change a product's prices on all sales channels. They work with brands such as Samsung, Sony, Suzuki to increase their online revenue. Now, if you run Google Shopping, which I know a lot of you absolutely do, this software is absolutely key to accelerating profits. One of the reasons I recommend Pricing to my clients is because you can find out your competitors' pricing and stock availability all in one simple to understand dashboard, giving you a huge competitive advantage. Now, if you have any inquiries and questions about this software, or you're ready to get cracking, we have worked out a very, very special deal for our listeners where you can get a free month's trial and then 25% off for the first 3 months. Head to ecom1.com pricing and complete the inquiry form, and we will connect our listeners to the Pricing team. Right, let's head straight back to the episode. So obviously we've covered a lot of ground so far, and I think a lot of merchants, will be thinking, well, obviously Shopline as a Singaporean-based company, a lot of dominates very strongly in the Asian markets with over 500,000 merchants, which is an unbelievable presence. And obviously now looking to dominate and to establish initially and then dominate in Europe and the UK. But for the merchants that are listening in that want to get a foothold, want to start selling more in the Asian markets, what advice would you give to them?
I think, we have done really well so far. We've only been open and had a nice presence established since April of this year. We've done really well so far. There's definitely a need for a different piece of tech. So maybe we'll talk about that later. But the Asian market is huge. We've done really well there. There's obviously half the world's population just between China and India. China alone is 37 billion of GBP for the UK. They're the third largest trading partner of the UK for exports. So super important market, and they love, like I said earlier, British brands. I think that's really really important to know. And we've got close links with those markets. So there's definitely a market there. So if you've got the product, they will buy the product. And it's a market as well where they're obviously got more and more funding to buy that type to buy more expensive foreign goods. So there's a huge market and opportunity for British brands to export to China and the rest of Asia. Once that product, I think, is sorted, to get into those markets, you really need to know what you're doing. You can't just, it's not like selling into Europe where Brexit aside, it's relatively easy to trade into the European markets. In Asia, there's lots of different ways of shopping. I think it's important to understand that.
Yeah.
But also getting the right last mile delivery, the logistics infrastructure in place is really, really important.
Yeah.
By 2050, there's going to be the equivalent of another 2 Chinas in the world's population. And most of that trade comes from the Far East and from Latin America. So now is the time really to export those markets.
I think it's, when you start sort of visualizing the size of the opportunity, and I think as a UK merchant, like you mentioned, like Burberry, they obviously, there's somebody from, China, for example, they could come into London, buying the Burberry bag and then selling that back on a live like that, paying for their trip as it's a side thing. But, but obviously there's a massive demand for UK brands, that in different Asian countries. I spent probably 9-10 months in Singapore back in the day. I loved it, and I spent quite a lot of time out in Asia. But I think the size of the opportunity. But speaking to a lot of merchants, I think quite a lot of the sort of hesitancy and challenge is quite a lot around the logistics side of things.
Yeah.
Is there anything specifically that Shopline does around the logistics?
Yeah, I mean, we've got more than 8,000 people in China.
Yeah.
A lot of those will work in the social side. A lot of them are developers and sort of techie people building out and integrating the product into 3PLs. We've got a huge logistics infrastructure in China. So we've got teams of people that advise how to get into Asian markets, how to really fully exploit those products. Very hands-on in that area.
I noticed, you mentioned quite a lot of like luxury brands, and I think, fashion, luxury is a big part of Shopline's portfolio, and it's very much aligns with the clients that we work with around in terms of sort of fashion and apparel. I don't know, without mentioning too many names, you've got some huge well-known brands that most people will aspire to maybe have one of their handbags or two, or perfumes or whatever it may be. Obviously you've got some amazing brands, but how have you managed to win those clients over other platforms? Yeah,
I wish I could mention some of the names. They're very luxury brands that are very secretive of their tech stack. So I think we start off with fashion. Everyone thinks fashion's easy in the technology side of our industry. It's absolutely not easy. You're selling very complicated bundles. You mentioned earlier the suits that comes in, lengths of arms and fits for the top of your legs compared to the bottom of your legs. And we've got loads of pop-up niche players that are basically measuring how your thighs are compared to your shins. There's lots of players that do that and just focus on custom-made fashion in that area. So the industry as a whole need to understand, I think, that fashion is not easy. It's not selling hoodies online. These are luxury brands that have a lot of complexity around how the product is built, but also how the merchandisers cross-sell and upsell those product ranges. If you buy a very expensive couple of grand handbag, that's a very different customer to the person who buys a candle once a year for Mother's Day or something. So there's an understanding in there about how the businesses trade. Our ambition is to be the platform that e-commerce teams love to use. And I think that's really how we've been able to secure some of the more luxury brands, because people like using it as they move around into other fashion or other similar luxury companies. They want to use the tech they want to use, they're used to using. And the other thing is, because of, I guess, economies of scale, we're able to really create new features for specific verticals, specific types of merchants, where a lot of our competitors are building on tech debt and they find it hard to move on and do some of the basics right.
I think that's a key part, isn't it? We touched on it before we hit record, but ultimately, very specific verticals have very specific requirements. So we talk about the clothing sizes and the different lengths and sizes we all are. Yeah. But as a e-com store manager that's managing the back end of that store, you've got to obviously want to be able to use that platform. I get buy-in from your wider e-com team, and quite often, there's usually it's XYZ platform so clunky. We've got to go in and do XYZ. That's going to take hours to do this, that, and the other. So I think having obviously winning these brands is great, but obviously maintaining and retaining certain clients, and any client, is absolutely key to anybody listening, really, in terms of, from the partner perspective and from the development perspective. But from a merchant perspective, you want your teams to enjoy being in the back ends of the platforms, if that's possible.
I think that's really important, and actually not just tech, but if you're choosing an agent, that's why you guys do so well, because you really understand the brands you're working with. You're asking relevant questions that talk about how the business might grow and put plans together for these merchants. You can't do an SEO plan unless you actually understand what the objectives of a business is in the future.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we've done really well, is because we definitely talk about how you re-platform and how you get the most out of our tech, but we are asking, like, what are you trying to do when you're trying to sell that bag? What happens if it goes out of stock? All the weird use cases that the merchandiser has to deal with manually, maybe on a daily basis. Yeah. We're trying to build features around that, or at least make it possible for their developers to build features around that. Yeah. So that the tool is actually not a nightmare.
Yeah, and that's the problem, especially in fashion, isn't it? That in and out of stock, different sizes. How is your platform dealing with that?
Yeah.
How is your, Google Ads, for example, dealing with a very popular product that's got 7 sizes, but you've only got 1 size in? Should you still be bidding 100% when you've only got 1 size? You've got 1 chance of the buy of the apple when there's 7 to go out normally. And if your tech can't handle those different variables, you're using them for a world of pain, or usually not a very successful marketing campaign if your tech stack isn't getting the buy-in from the people that are using it. So we've covered a lot of ground, from live streaming, selling our lives, to your easy rank SEO, and obviously some bigger areas. But what I'm keen to see if we can get out of you is some things that aren't really maybe known out there that well around the roadmap for SHOPLINE over the next sort of 12 months. What are some of the things that are coming down the pipeline that maybe you can share with us?
Yeah, it's a very fast-moving roadmap. In July, we released 200 new features to all of our different components. Email marketing, subscriptions, membership, obviously the main site itself, the POS system, payments, lots of different areas. So those 200 features are spread really across all of those different teams. We've got a very agile product team. They're able to accept new features. We don't really have a 12-month. We've got a vision for where the product's going to go, but we are able to add new features in on a quarter-by-quarter basis, which is a very powerful thing to be able to do. Generally, though, what we're trying to do as a product is hit those points that I said earlier. We're trying to make it even more user-friendly, to be able to connect to some of the biggest players out there for when it comes to headless front ends and all the things that merchants are requesting more and more of at the moment. And in the core of the platform, we're not just going to be building those starter stores with, I list some products and I create a cart on Vue.js, for example. That's very nice. But all the data that's being created in those experience layers, we need to bring back. Just like we are in social, we're bringing that back in, so that as we create even smarter deep learning functionality, personalization functionality in the core product, that can be used by developers on the front end. So that's really where we're going, and I think nobody's doing that at the moment.
That is very unique from a platform perspective. So very much a focus on that lifetime value,
absolutely,
of the visitor. Yeah, well, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for visiting us here at eCom 1 HQ. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I like to finish every episode with a book recommendation. David, do you have a book that you recommend to our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, there's a book called Inspired, and it's about how you build really cool products that customers love to use. So maybe I'll give you a link and we can put it in the chat.
Yeah, we'll hook it up in the show notes. Well, thanks for coming on the show, David. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here at eCom 1 HQ. Thanks for coming down to see us.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast. You're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.